2003 TMNT got held back, and here's why. And if you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not, welcome to the video. Now, this show had amazing story, character development, and everything in between. There's just one problem. It's a kid's show. Now, I know you might be confused by what I mean, if you've never seen the show especially. And some people may not know this, but TMNT isn't strictly a kid-friendly franchise. It has some pretty dark stuff, and the OG Mirage comics weren't very kid-friendly. One of the OG creators of the Mirage comics, Peter Laird, even helped produce the 2003 show. To be honest, I don't think TMNT ever meant to become as kid-friendly as it is today, and this show definitely leaned into that. This is with the help of Laird. They were trying to make a darker tone TMNT, something like we haven't seen before. And they cooked, because the show definitely wasn't like the 80s Turtles. This wasn't to say it wasn't funny though, the Turtles will always be funny, but the storylines and characters were so much more serious. There are tons, and I mean tons of times, I forgot the show was actually made for kids. But now that you know that, let me tell you about some of the stories in the show. For example, Baxter Stockman. Stockman's entire character was very dark. Every time he would fail, Shredder would take a body part, and he wasn't playing. It went from him being a fully functioning man to missing an eye, then an arm, a wheelchair. It went on until he was nothing but a brain in a jar, bro. A brain in a jar. Like, that was extremely dark for a kid's show. But it gets even worse. Welcome to the episode, Insane in the Membrane. This is the episode of the show that almost made 2003 get canceled. You'll see what I mean later. It still blows my mind to this day that they made this episode, even though 4Kids deemed it too dark and it would never go on to actually air. So what makes this episode so bad? I'll explain. This episode solely follows Baxter Stockman. It takes place in the later season, and Baxter Stockman at this point is just a brain in a jar, which is crazy. He can't stand the fact that he's just a brain, and I mean, I wouldn't either. I think that's kind of common knowledge. So he ends up making a new body, thanks to his smarts, but he was in such a rush and hurry to make the body, things go south quickly. He was so focused on getting the body made quickly, he wasn't checking the fine details. And he greatly pays the price for this. Greatly. His body starts deteriorating on him, and his body literally starts melting until he is a Frankenstein monster. And they show a lot. It's unclear if he feels pain, but I'd assume so, I guess. Basically, at this point, he starts going insane, hence the name Insane in the Membrane. He starts losing his mind and thinks back all the way to the beginning of the show, and he blames April for everything because she betrayed him. He ends up kidnapping her, but of course the turtles stop him, and at the end of the episode, he falls into the ocean. He does end up surviving, but the worst part is, he said he wishes he would have just died. And the icing on the cake, the whole episode, he's having flashbacks of his dead mother and his childhood. This drives him even more insane. That is for sure the darkest episode in any TMNT show I've ever seen. There was also a canceled episode where Hun and the Garbage Man were supposedly Siamese twins, and Hun got surgery in a back alley to separate the two. Now that's crazy because you always see the Garbage Man in a machine, and at first I thought it was just because he was a fat piece of trash, pun intended. But he actually just doesn't have legs. This episode ultimately got canceled before it even was made by 4Kids because, once again, too dark. So now that you see some of this stuff, you might understand what I'm saying a little better. I really want to make the point known that I acknowledge this is a kid's show, so these things getting canceled and whatnot, it makes sense. The reason I say held back is because despite TMNT having such dark stories, we have yet to actually get a TMNT show that's not targeted towards kids. And I think 2003 was the perfect chance for this. They had everything right, it's just one aspect they couldn't work around. Even characters like Leo, they finally did justice. Leo is always just seen as the leader, or in versions like the 80s, a party dude with the other three. But this show showed the fact that he genuinely is stressed and panicking. He goes into an emo depression arc after the turtles straight up are gonna die. They decide to sacrifice themselves, including Splinter, And if it wasn't for the Utroms stopping time, they would be dead. Not to mention the episode where Donnie goes into another apocalyptic world and the turtles actually die. But after this, Leo realizes he failed to protect his family as a leader and a brother, and he goes into a crazy edgelord arc. All he ends up worrying about is training, and in my opinion, this is the greatest Leo has ever been. I mean, think about it. It's literally them, Casey, and April against the whole ninja clan, aliens, and the government. And Leo has to hold the stress of being the leader. A lot of people claim it's just the show trying to be edgy, but it makes perfect sense. I could go on for hours about character development and storylines in the show, to be honest, but I also want to touch on the comedy. With all this stuff I'm saying, I'm by no means saying the show wasn't funny. This show had an amazing humor, and Mikey was never not funny in the show. I think having TMNT without humor isn't really having TMNT, but that doesn't mean the show can't have dark storylines. The best way I can let people visualize what I mean is imagine a show like Invincible with no holding back on gore so they can use their weapons properly, no holding back on cussing and being able to have free will of how dark they want to go some storylines, all while having that classic TMNT humor. But at the end of the day, this show was made by 4 kids and they were not having all those dark storylines and whatnot, so they eventually made a wild choice. They rebranded the last 2 seasons of the show to be more lighthearted and kid-friendly. They even changed the animation up. The worst and most disrespectful part about this is the 5th season never ended up airing. They didn't want to waste time on the dark storylines anymore, so they just pushed the 6th season out. But those OG 5 seasons will remain in my heart as the greatest TMNT has ever been. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you would like to see a TMNT show like I said. It'd be fire. Anyways, that is the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Maybe if you didn't see 2003 TMNT, maybe I made you want to see it by watching this video, or, you know, maybe I turned you on to something, I don't know. But, yeah. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And you know I'll see you next time. Peace.